I want to continue the American football analogy, but I'm not good enough for American football. But basically, what's it called when they throw the ball down? They're already spiking the ball, aren't they?
They're spiking the ball.
Hello and welcome to episode 300 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. Hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but on this show, I chat with a band of marketing chums to share our marketing street knowledge to bring out the rockstar marketer in you. You'd think I'd do something special for episode 300, but it's really just the 300th episode of the studio with all the other episodes I've done, including with Robert and various specials. It's actually episode 348. I missed my 300th. But what better way to celebrate the not 300th than welcome Jeff back after Thanksgiving to discuss some new research into B2B buyers. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word.
We'll be right back
After this word.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Gift magical mornings with Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Compact and stylish, Virtuo Pop is made to meet every morning coffee craving. From espresso to coffee, hot or iced, at the click of a button. And celebrate the season with Nespresso's limited edition coffee flavors. Sweet almond and hibiscus, cinnamon and candied tamarind, and festive double espresso. Magic in the making. Shop the holiday gift collection exclusively at Nespresso.com.
Hello, Ian. It's nice to see you in the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thank you very much, mate. How are you?
I am doing very well. And
Jolly
the
good.
exciting news here is we're having our first substantial snowstorm. So after this, I grabbed a lunch early. So after this call, I could start shoveling snow.
Fabulous. So it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas out there, then.
It is if it hangs around. And that's always the question at this time of year is, will it stick or will the rain drive it away?
Yeah, but you got to shovel it anyway, and then you realise that actually it's gone in 2 days.
Yes, that's exactly. Exactly.
All right, splendid. Well, here the weather has been kind of bright, but we've had some showers, so it's just it's more fall than winter weather, I guess. Here we had a bit of a cold snap, but yes, but everything's starting to wind into Christmas now. Because I think once you're in December, you can't deny people from having their trees up, and all that stuff starts, doesn't it?
But as you know, the stores around here, they've been selling Christmas stuff since Halloween was taken off the shelves.
True. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was very good.
Yeah, because I haven't seen you since then.
It was, dinner with friends and eating too much.
Nice
long conversations in which you kind of fall asleep during because you ate too much.
Fantastic. All right, mate. So this week we're going to be discussing a new report from 6 Sense and Stein, which is doing the rounds at the moment. It's called Winning in the Brands to Demand Zone, and it's authored by Marc Keating, Chief Innovation Officer at Stein, and Kerry Cunningham, Research and Thought Leadership, and friend of the show from 6 Sense, right? Do you say Stein or do you say Stein?
I would say Stein.
Stein.
Unless I heard differently, but yes, it can be pronounced both ways.
Yeah. Okay. And then, we talk about 6 Sense a fair amount on this podcast, aside from the fact that Kerry has actually been on the podcast in the past, because they do some fabulous research. But I don't think the listeners will be familiar with Stein. So I thought I'd share that they are a B2B marketing agency with around 130 people based in New York and London, and they seem to have paired up with 6 Sense to do this. And I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, the report's been getting a bit of traction in our Goldfish Bowl as it digs into the 95-5 rule that we talk about quite a lot, don't we? That asserts that only 5% of your total addressable market are active in the market at any one time. And we use this as shorthand to encourage marketers to do a bit of brand marketing to the other 95%, as everyone is focused on the 5%. And the nice thing about this report is it reveals that, as we probably would have predicted, that it's a bit more nuanced than just 95-5. And I think we've discussed this as well. I mean, it's not always going to be the right ratio for everybody, right? It depends on your category, your place in that category. But it's good to have some research to support it. And I've called this in the past on our podcast the big dark bucket, but these chaps have christened it the rather more prosaic or better sounding brands to demand zone. So I was doing the air quotes there. And it's based on analysis from 1,000 of 6 Sense customers and 19 million, no less, of their customers' ICP accounts. I know.
So how many did you do the math to see how many ICPs those 1,000 customers have?
Well, yeah, quite a lot. I don't necessarily know how that correlates, but anyway, I trust them that they did. I mean, I'm sure that 6 Sense have got 1,000 customers because every bugger talks about them all the time. So, what say you, Jeff, from that just first read of this report?
Well, I love the title. I mean, I think it says a lot about where we should be putting our emphasis, and but it also reminded me of the American football term, the red zone. So for people on the other side of the pond, that's like when you're within 20 yards of the end zone, which is where you score. And and from a marketer's perspective, that's where you're doing your demand work. It's that the chances are the buyer is very high that the chances are very high that they are out. They're going to buy once they've entered that zone. But the marketer's job is for them to, in order to score with your playbook, you've got to be working with them on those previous 80 yards. And I know this is not a perfect analogy, but it does kind of describe how the buyer's done a lot of work, toward their goals. And before they score, a lot goes on. And so, you really have to help them score with your solution, focused on their needs. And it's a tough problem because, where we usually think people are raising their hands, that's proving to be later and later in the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. That sort of, brand zone or demand, that brand zone is shorter, and they've arrived. I don't know. I want to continue the American football analogy, but I'm not good enough for American football. But basically, what's it called when they throw the ball down? They're already spiking the ball, aren't they? Or whatever
spiking the ball,
they're ready to go. Yeah. And just a bit more about the report. It runs to over 30 pages, so there was plenty for us to get stuck into. And we're going to give this report our 5 effing things treatment and pull out the top 5 things that caught our eye. And for a change, as you've had a bit less time with this report than me because of the holiday, I'm going to go first.
Yes, and that was something that I was very thankful for over my Thanksgiving dinner. So, Ian, what is number 1 on our 5 effing things?
Well, I like the number 1 is there are 3 states, which is pretty obvious actually. And I've picked the easy and obvious one here, so I didn't actually do that much work. Because I mean, clearly, if you start to scratch at the surface of the 95-5% rule, it's going to be obvious that there are people. It's not all of a sudden that somebody goes from complete ignorance to suddenly being in the 5%, right? So I thought that was interesting. But they split this out into 3 states. That 60% are out of market. So that was the former 95%. 34% are actively evaluating, and 6% are ready to buy. And so that sort of creates something that doesn't quite trip off the tongue quite as well. But the 60-34-6 rule, I think as I saw on LinkedIn, how people love to do this shit, is that they use this 60-34-6 rule to say that the 95-5 rule is dead. So, you know how we all love to claim something is dead.
It's dead, even though it's not dead. It's still kicking.
Yeah, but I actually think that this is just a slightly nuanced way of saying the same thing that we've been saying. This general premise that actually the majority of your potential buyers are dark to what we've traditionally called the funnel or our marketing automation tools and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, as we've maintained before on this podcast, you know, if we're targeting the 5%, we're probably too late, because that we've referred to other 6 Sense data that the buyer has shortlisted before they're ready to buy. And I think this has now been, I think everybody's talking about this particular stat, isn't it? It's not just 6 Sense data anymore. And so whether we're talking about a 60 plus 34 or whether we're talking about a 95, you know, you need to have been influencing that group because they're shortlisting, right? Yep. So, and 80% of that group have shortlisted. So that was what I took away from it, was that I like the 3 states. I like the 60-34-6. I like the nuance of this discussion, but it doesn't really change the fact that, you know, we got to get in there where we're unknown. What did you think?
Well, I hate to go back to the American football analogy, but 60-34-6, it sounds like you're calling a play.
Like a play.
When the quarterback comes up, puts his hands, near the center and says 60-34-6. Marketers should know, okay, we need to be doing our brand work. But you're right, certainly right. This is a nuance on what we've been talking about for years, and buyers are doing a great deal of work before they appear you appear on a short list, or they give you a call, they fill out a web form, whatever. So, the critical reason to get on the short list, as you say, is that once they've created the short list, apparently within like days of actually thinking that this is serious. So that means it's like there's all kinds of work that's been happening beforehand. That's like, they've been listening to things, whatever. We'll talk about this a little bit later. And it's like they have a list of vendors. Yeah. Okay, now it's time to put a project together. Yeah, and if you're not in there, you're on the losing end.
Right. Yeah. So what have you picked for number 2? So that was number 1.
Well, I love the phrase, there is a semi-permeable membrane between in-market and out-of-market. So I love a good biological metaphor. This aspect, they define that, what buyers are doing as they sort of flow back and forth between those, those states of, as I go back to the actively evaluating to ready to buy, state, is that there's kind of like these, I don't know if you'd call them actions or sub-states, but there's like active monitoring. So they're staying current on industry trends. There's passive absorption, means that they're encountering vendor messages, while they're focused elsewhere. Trigger exploration, responding to, a business event that creates some kind of urgency. And then intentional research, which is more what you think about if you're in that demand zone. We're actively looking at investigating solutions. But this underscores why brand efforts are so valuable, because there's all this engagement when the buyer's brain is not really, they haven't gotten to active evaluation. So they're doing other things, and which is where, you may think that you may have the best chance of engaging them. Or it's probably where you don't think you may have the best chance of engaging because you're not for their project's not on the forefront of their mind. But also, I think this is where, if you think about the messaging that you're going to be creating to attract them, is the understanding the trigger events is so important, because that's where something might just bounce them out of this sort of more passive alertness to what's going on in the market. And, there's internal and external trigger events that, buyers, get them into the market. And so those should be reflected in your content. So like if you're a cybersecurity vendor, you should be messaging to, what to do when alerted to a cyber attack, because, people may, particularly people who are, focused in the areas where cybersecurity would be an issue, like they're in legal, or maybe if they're in HR. Certainly if they're in IT, they may be, just kind of keeping, an eye on what's going on in the market. And, if you create a guide on something of those themes, they may, take it, put it put it in their back pocket to come out when they need to. And so, their report identifies all the 3 different kind of trigger scenarios: scheduled, pain driven, opportunity driven. So, thinking about those, what are the questions that people might be asking that would arrive to those, or that would be spurred by those trigger points, would be really important when you're thinking about crafting your messaging, to attract these buyers.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like all of this. I like what you were saying about the idea of a semi-permeable membrane, because also this kind of puts into mind the fact of what we've been talking about, which is that buyers' journeys are not linear, and people move between states as they go through, and also different people in the buying committee or the buying group will move into different states at different times. And so these different the nuance that they've got here about the active monitoring, passive absorption, triggered exploration, and intentional research, I think you could map those to the different members of your buying group of when they're going to do those, because somebody from legal is actually, they're not going to be researching anything, right, until you tell them to. So there's so I think that's really interesting. And as you say, as we've discussed when we've talked about buyers' journeys, these trigger events is why is it, and what are the gates, and what's going to get somebody through that. And as you just said, is what content do they need, what information do they need to help them go past. So completely, I mean, I like that point as well. And that semi-permeable membrane, really nice phrase. I like that.
It's hard to say, but it, it makes sense.
Yeah, but it does make sense.
Yeah. So what is number 3 on our list?
Well, it's something that we talked about last week, actually. Oh, no, the last time we chatted, when we talked about the Momentum ABM research. And I've actually used the phrase from their report rather than from this report from 6 Sense, which is say hello to a new member of the buying group, our buyer's AI assistant, because they make exactly the same point, right? Which is that 95, their research says that 94% of buyers consult LLMs early in their research, which, I think I'm hearing as well, and I'm just keying off something you were just talking about people filling in forms and becoming aware. There is some talk I'm hearing, I don't know if there's any firm research on this, that people aren't filling out forms. And the reason why they're not filling out forms is because they're getting the information that's in the gated asset from the LLM, right? So they don't need to download your 6 things. They can just create their own, right? So I don't know whether that's true, but that seems to be a thesis that's developing within sales and marketing B2B. But in this report, they talk about how content needs to be structured to be learned by AI. Otherwise, the buyers might not see your most recent postings, product updates, proof points, which suggests we lean into GEO or they say AIO, I think, which is the generative stuff, which also suggests not gating, right? Because I'm assuming that an LLM is not going to get through your gate. So, I think this is different to what we've thought of as SEO and Google in the past, that you and I have discussed as well, because there's like an influencer in the room. So the buyer's going to be discussing this with the LLM. They're not just combing through 1,000 search results and coming up with their own idea, right? And it might be that the LLM will suggest the current way to solve the problem. Maybe they'll recommend doing a spreadsheet or something else, right? So it's really going to depend on the question that's being asked. So I think the emerging category will need to be is not just educating the LLMs, but actually educating the questions people are going to ask the LLM to come to our way of thinking, if that makes sense. So I think this buyer's AI assistant, we're really early in this, but I think there's going to be some research into this.
Absolutely. And I totally agree, because one of the things, actually one comment I just wanted to make is that when we discussed this into the, the marketing reset, that this was the one thing out of that research that was truly a reset, as opposed to just kind of coming back to fundamentals. But certainly one of the things that I've experienced, I think you've experienced when you're trying to use AI for doing research or anything, is that the way you ask the question determines how the large language model will provide the relevant information. And, you ask it a couple different ways, you'll get different answers. You may get different 100%. References to different source content. So as marketers, we need to be thinking about how to structure our content to answer typical questions from the buyers. Of course, this is a lot of stuff you may even do in your sort of internal messaging frameworks. Is what are pain points, what are questions, so it's almost as though you got to put that stuff out there,
Absolutely.
On the readable web. And that's how it's going to be recognized by the large language model. Return your information and hopefully return the link that says you should be talking to XYZ vendor for more information.
Yeah, but it's but like you say, it's not just the LLM having that. It's actually how is the buyer going to ask the question, and so we need to sow the seeds of curiosity, which is that they're going to say, "Oh, I've recognized I've got a problem. How do I solve this problem?" So there's that you're still going to need to do about that marketing of the problem and framing it so that people ask the right questions of the LLM.
I'm also betting that some of these AI tools are going to be able to figure out how to fill in a web form so they can get to the gated content.
That's probably absolutely true. I mean, they probably can just guess the URL and just sneak past our form completely. But yeah. So what have you picked as number 4?
Hidden buyers are a challenge, and certainly, I mean, we've talked about this. Actually, I didn't go back to see what episode, but it wasn't too long ago. We talked about, the importance of messaging to hidden buyers. So, and obviously that's going to be different depending on what you're selling out there. But if you're selling software solutions, there's HR, there's legal, there may be other people in other parts of an IT department that are going to be interested. And they're not necessarily the person who is going to be, leading the charge on doing the research. So they're not necessarily the champion, and they may not necessarily be, the decision maker either. But they had a stat, hidden buyers reject 50% of shortlisted vendors, and they are 1.7 times more influenced by brand reputation than their peers. So it's interesting. There was a quote, I don't know if it came from this or from other research I was banging around from Bain & Company. Vendors are 20 times more likely to be bought when known by the whole buying group. So not only champions and decision makers, but, these hidden buyers. So this is where, thinking about, if I think back to some of the things we were just talking about, it's like, well, okay, what's the guy in legal going to be asking about cybersecurity solutions? What's HR going to be asking about personal privacy in any kind of IT solution? And again, being able to know what that question is, and being able to put that out in your messaging. So, and we've often commented on the challenge and then being able to identify who these buyers are and then communicating to them. But they're not, they're not, because they're not the ones quarterbacking the research. However, they're interested in addressing the organization's buying needs. One of the other things, though, is that I think we noted from some other research that they prioritize risk mitigation over feature differentiation. So again, the brand impressions are going to be important, and they may not be looking for the leading vendor in a category, but they certainly are looking to somebody who's going to be messaging to this is probably going to be a safe bet for us to implement if we're trying to solve that particular problem. So they may go with a challenger, even if they think that the risk of purchase, because they think that the risk of purchase is low in their eyes. And again, this hidden buyer, when we think back to the sort of the different phases and actions within this semi-permeable membrane, is that these are the ones that are kind of like picking up something that they hear about, store it away, pick up, try to keep an ear out, but I'm not really spending a lot of time and attention on it because I've got my day job to do. But you're going to need to be influencing them, certainly when they're in the demand zone, but it helps to be thinking about how you're going to influence them before they get there.
Oh, for sure. And I think that, it's funny, isn't it? Because there's all sorts of different threads we can pull on from this particular part about the way they were discussing hidden buyers, because it seems quite obvious that, the Bain & Company stuff about the fact if the whole buying group knows a vendor, they're more likely to buy. Absolutely. This is that whole, nobody gets fired for buying IBM type idea, isn't it? And a well-known mainstream category leader is more likely to be known by somebody in legal than your specialist tool that's going to solve this problem. And also there's a level of selling by the sponsor. So it's going to depend on the power of your sponsor to tell that story within the buying group, right? So I think that's really interesting. And then there's the flip side of it, which is that your message and you're selling something different, which is exactly as you say, and as the report says, which is risk mitigation. So, and as you say, it may be that a challenger represents to them some not peculiar, but some specific reason is why it doesn't present such a big risk. So you don't need to worry too much if you're not the market. If you are a market challenger rather and not the dominant brand, you still might get selected by the hidden buyer, but you got to make sure you do the work.
Right. You can say, well, why am I not a risk?
Yeah.
Right. It's like you could say, well, we're the new guy in the market, but we have the latest solution that is proven, proven out there by X number of customers, and it's
well, that's why when we talk about that's why when we talk about personas, we talk about their appetite for risk and change, right? And so if you're working with a bunch of early adopters, if we look at that bell curve of early adopters like before the chasm, then those people are going to want the latest thing, and they're going to see it as a risk if they take the boring thing that everybody else is buying, right? The risk for them is going to be flipped around completely, isn't it?
Right, absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
So what is number 5?
What I've picked here is a kind of continuation of what we've been discussing here, in that what I found interesting about what they were talking about here was what was the actual phrase that they used? They used the category brand matrix. So basically what they've done is they've created a matrix, and we always struggle to describe matrices on this show because it's a visual thing, right? But it's the brand's market position and category dynamics. And they fundamentally shape how a buyer engages with you, and that's what they've called the category brand matrix, which is, of course, a strategic framework, because everybody has a strategic framework, right?
Yeah,
why would your framework be anything less?
Right. This is a tactical framework for the peons on your department.
I thought this is really relevant for us too, because we often talk about understanding. We talk about understanding the goals of your organization, right? We talk about the STARS model, which is understanding where your organization is in terms of whether you're a startup, turnaround, and all that kind of good stuff. But I like this idea of really understanding, and I put in the notes all of them. So it's startup, turnaround, accelerate growth, realignment, and sustained success, just so that we've got them all in there. But I like this idea about where you're sitting in the category, because unlike something like a Gartner Magic Quadrant, which in theory is all about product functionality and roadmap, right? And it isn't about paying the analysts. It's about they tend to focus on the product itself. But we both know that more features and functions are not the entire answer to winning in a category. And their category brand matrix is about, if you can on the left hand up and down part of the quadrant is category maturity, and then on the bottom axis is brand presence. So if you're very mature if the category itself is very established and mature, and you have a good brand presence in it, this is great for you because you've got the leader position. You're probably the dominant vendor in that market, but it means that you don't have to sell the category because everybody knows the category, because the category is very mature. You just need to sell yourself. But when you're in the bottom left-hand quadrant, which is that it's a new category, the buyers don't know this category, there are very few competitors or whatever, you're in that sort of pioneer position, as they refer to it, and you've got a low brand presence in that category, you've got a shitload of work to do, right? Which is that you need to not only be educating the buyer on the problem, and defining the category and marketing the category, but then you've got to market yourself within that category. And I think we've talked about this. I've certainly written a bit about this as well. That's then the challenge, isn't it? And I've wandered off my notes a bit, but I think that's the point I'm making. Is it's another way of understanding as a senior marketer where you sit in the world, right? Which is not only whether you're a startup, turnaround, all that stuff, but also how mature this category is, and then your position and awareness within that category is going to be, is going to be something that's going to define the work you need to do and your success metrics.
Exactly.
Bit of a long one there.
Yeah.
Like I say.
Well, I think there was a. Oh, were you done?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay,
I say, it's always a struggle to describe these quadrants in a quick, succinct way.
Yeah. There was a great example that was in a discussion, and I don't remember if it was around this report but it was, it was on LinkedIn, and it was, using, the early days of marketing automation platforms. The vendors, had to basically educate people. And why do you need more than just an email blaster, right? And so that's one thing that you've got to do. You're going to be answering questions, or you're putting that information out on the web for potential buyers. But then as the category and the buyers themselves mature, you go beyond that to why is why a marketing automation platform into let's talk about digital marketing tactics. Let's talk about tracking buyers' journeys. Let's talk about integrating your systems. So buyers are looking for different information that, their AI and their search inquiries are going to be picking up. And so, understanding, where you and your category are, makes a big difference in terms of the type of content you need to be putting out there. And, in general, just the education challenge for you educating the buyers.
Yeah. And I don't know. And if we go back to that prompting thing and the sort of curiosity we want to spark is, are people going to be saying to their LLMs, I want HubSpot but cheaper, or I want HubSpot for mobile? If you've got that upper right quadrant position in your category, are you then defining the category to the LLMs and to the buyer when they're looking for the solution, right? Is you've defined, it's shorthand for what you're looking for, kind of thing.
Yep.
It's interesting, yeah.
It also makes me think, and so this is not in our notes, but it was making me think about the fact that if you're a challenger in an established market and you're trying to do one of these things where you're trying to carve out a niche, that you're giving it a new name, or blazing new trail, and you're trying to differentiate yourself from the big gorillas in the market, then the challenge comes back to, well, the people you're trying to attract may be asking the very same questions, looking for the same information that your gorillas in the market are providing. And so you've really got a challenge of being able to grab their attention and move you up the brand maturity of that on the y-axis of that matrix.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's all content strategy, isn't it? It's all brand strategy. Again, and getting positioned. So cool. All right. So those are our 5 things, and we've got to wrap up because we're coming up to time. So just as a reminder, the report we were focusing on, and in my notes I've put forced on, which we weren't really forced. I just wrote forced instead of focused on. This week was maybe a Freudian slip there. I don't know how you felt about this report, but I didn't feel forced on. Winning. So it's called Winning in the Brand to Demand Zone by 6 Sense and Stein, which is gated, but I will include a link in the show notes. And those are our 5 effing takeaways. Number 1, the 3 states that they identified. Number 2, a semi-permeable membrane between in-market and out-market. Number 3, the buyer's AI assistant. And number 4, the challenge of hidden buyers. And then what we just talked about, number 5, understanding where we sit in the category. So I quite like how this report evolves the original LinkedIn Ehrenberg Bass Institute concept of the 95-5 rule with this 60-34-6 rule, which, and I
you
referred
thought
to this
Stein
earlier,
was hard to pronounce. Ehrenberg.
Ehrenberg Bass. Yeah. And I think it underlines a lot of what you and I have been talking about this year. So as we're sort of wrapping up 2025, and I know we'll cover this in other podcasts as we wind down the year, but it does seem that it's consistent, the fact that B2B marketers need to focus on reaching the majority, that 95% or 60% or 94%, whatever you want to describe them as the next potential buyers, with a bit of, whisper it, Jeff, brand activation. Do you agree?
I agree. And one other thing I'll say about the report, because most of as you said, it's a long report. Most of what we covered is kind of in the first chapter or so. It does have 4 chapters. It gets into some more executional-like stuff for those of you that are interested in some tips and tricks down there. So, I thought it was a good addition to our marketing education for 2025.
Yeah, it's a hefty old thing. I was actually surprised that it was gated because most of the 6 Sense stuff is not gated. And I know that Kerry is normally against gating, but I guess that was the partnership with Stein or whatever that they had to do.
Stein was looking for, they were looking for business.
Yeah. Well, they wanted to understand where the 6%, 90 people were, right? So we move on to our last agenda item, which is the song, which, because you're down with the cool kids, you've chosen this week, Jeff.
I chose the song All I Do Is Win, which I think the title speaks for itself, by DJ Khaled, 2010. And, as I said, the title speaks for it, because it's like, if you understand this and you understand how you can grab the attention of your buyers with your brand, you'll just be winning.
Exactly. Whereas I was, all I had in my head was Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins from Top Gun, and I can't.
Which is like where you don't want to be.
That's just. But also that song just drives me nuts. So I didn't want to play out on that. So off we go with DJ Khaled. And as we discussed before I hit record, I think I've got my timings all right this week. We are going to be in the studio next week, right, friend?
Yes, we are.
Good.
Awesome.
I'll see you then.
Cheers,
buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
DJ Khaled. All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was a little bit of DJ Khaled, All I Do Is Win. And of course, I will include a link to the report we were discussing, winning in the brand to demand zone, in the show notes. And by the way, we've no affiliation to these folks, aside from Kerry being a former guest. So that's a wrap on episode 300 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks to Jeff for his insight, and to you for putting a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. You can find links to me and Jeff and all the things we discussed in the show notes, along with the links to our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes at rockstarcmo.com. If you have a suggestion for a topic for the show, please reach out via the website or LinkedIn. Just search Rockstar CMO, or you can contact me directly at hello@rockstarcmo.com. Coming up this week, Robert Rose will be in the virtual bar on Saturday, and Jeff and I will be sharing a special roundup of what stood out for us in 2025 next Wednesday. So I hope you'll join us for that here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkins-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkinsporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.